In the serene grounds of Jetavana, Buddha sat beneath the shade of a grand Bodhi tree. His disciples encircled him, their hearts eager to hear his wisdom. Among them stood a young healer named Ananda, burdened by his inability to cure a grievously ill child. The sorrow etched on Ananda's face did not escape Buddha's discerning gaze. Desire, like a flame, he continued, burns brightly but consumes the essence of peace, leaving behind ash and longing. Disciples exchanged glances, pondering the profound metaphor, while Buddha's gaze seemed to pierce the invisible knots in their minds. His words, spoken with profound stillness, hung in the air like a melody's final note. The disciples leaned closer, their breaths measured, their attention unwavering. The suffering you witness, Buddha continued, is not a curse but a reflection of life's impermanence. Do not fear it. He gestured toward a lotus blooming nearby, its petals soft and radiant. The lotus blooms even in muddy waters. It does not curse the mud but rises above it. Ananda's eyes brimmed with tears. Master, he faltered, how can I heal another when my own heart carries such despair? His voice trembled, the words heavy with unspoken grief. The disciples exchanged glances, their expressions mirroring Ananda's inner turmoil. Buddha placed a gentle hand on Ananda's shoulder. When you carry despair, he said, it clouds your vision, blurring the path to compassion. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. A healer must first be healed, Ananda. Only then can you guide others toward peace. Buddha's eyes scanned the gathering, his gaze resting momentarily on each disciple. Let me tell you a story, he said, his voice rich with warmth. There was once a farmer whose crops withered under a relentless sun. His despair grew so great he cursed the heavens. The disciples listened, their breaths synchronized with Buddha's measured pace. One day, he continued, an old monk visited the farmer and sat silently beside him. The monk's presence, calm as a still lake, softened the farmer's anger. Did the monk speak to him? Master? A disciple asked, breaking the reverent silence. Buddha nodded, a faint smile gracing his lips. The monk said, your crops may wither, but the seeds of compassion remain within you. Tend to them. Ananda's lips parted as if to speak, but he hesitated, his brow furrowing. Buddha noticed this and encouraged him. Do not let hesitation hinder your voice. Ananda, he said, speak freely, for silence can be a vessel of doubt. Ananda took a deep breath, steadying his trembling hands. Master, what if my compassion falters? He asked, his tone a mix of vulnerability and determination. The disciples awaited Buddha's reply, their collective anticipation forming an unspoken unity. Compassion, Buddha began, is like the flame of a lamp. Even in darkness, it spreads warmth without diminishing itself. His words resonated deeply, their simplicity belying the profound truth they carried. Nurture this flame, Ananda, and let it guide your actions. Buddha rose gracefully, his movement fluid and deliberate. He approached the lotus, plucking a single petal with reverence. This petal, he said, holding it aloft, is fragile yet essential to the lotus's beauty. Every life is as precious. He returned to Ananda and placed the petal in his hands. Carry this as a reminder, he said, that each moment of compassion heals not only others but yourself. The disciples watched, their eyes reflecting a newfound resolve, their spirits buoyed by Buddha's luminous presence. Buddha resumed his seat beneath the Bodhi tree, the shadows lengthening as the sun began its descent. Now, he said, his tone both commanding and gentle, let us meditate on the suffering we witness and the compassion we hold. The disciples closed their eyes, their breaths synchronizing with the rhythm of the earth. The air grew still, imbued with a sacred tranquility. Ananda's face, once clouded with sorrow, softened as he cradled the petal in his hand, its delicate texture grounding him. Buddha's voice, though barely above a whisper, resonated deeply. Healing begins within, but it does not end there. It flows outward, touching all who seek it. His words lingered, their echoes intertwining with the rustling leaves and the distant hum of nature. Hours passed, and the disciples emerged from their meditation, their expressions serene yet determined. Ananda approached Buddha, bowing deeply, the petal still cradled in his hands. "Master," he said, his voice steady, "I see now that healing is not an act but a journey." Buddha's smile was radiant, his gaze filled with unspoken pride. "Ananda," he said, "your understanding has blossomed like the lotus. Tend to it with care." The disciples dispersed, their hearts carrying Buddha's teachings like lanterns lighting a path through the darkness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the monastery in hues of gold and crimson, Buddha remained seated. His eyes, half closed, reflected a serenity that seemed to encompass all of existence. The Bodhi tree stood as a silent witness, its roots deep and unwavering, its branches reaching toward the infinite sky. The teachings of that day etched themselves into the disciples' hearts, their wisdom rippling outward like a pebble cast into still waters. Buddha's words, spoken with such clarity and compassion, became a guiding light for all who sought to heal, to serve, and to understand the profound interconnectedness of all life. Another day. The sun rose gently over the distant hills, casting a warm glow across the serene Jetavana monastery. Buddha sat calmly by the riverbank, his robes shimmering faintly in the morning light. His disciples gathered once more, their anticipation mingling with the sound of flowing water. Among the disciples was Sudama, a renowned physician weighed down by doubts about his methods. He approached Buddha hesitantly, the turmoil in his heart evident in his furrowed brow. Buddha's gaze met his, filled with both understanding and compassion. As he gestured for Sudama to speak, "Master," Sudama began, his voice shaking, "I have treated countless patients. Yet many suffer from anguish that medicine cannot touch." He paused, his shoulders sinking under an invisible burden. "How can one heal the mind while treating the body?" Buddha nodded, his expression calm yet thoughtful, as though peering into Sudama's soul. "Sudama," he began softly, "the mind and body are bound, like the moon and its reflection in water." The disciples leaned in closer, the river's gentle murmur becoming the symphony of their meditation. "Let me share a story," Buddha continued, his voice steady as flowing water. "There was once a merchant plagued by ceaseless worry for his wealth." The disciples listened intently, their minds picturing the tale as Buddha wove its threads. The man's treasures filled his home, yet his heart remained empty, consumed by fears of theft and loss. Sudama's eyes widened, his curiosity stirred by Buddha's measured words. "What became of the merchant, Master?" he asked, his hands trembling slightly. Buddha's lips curved into a faint smile, his pause allowing the question's weight to settle. "One day," Buddha resumed, "a sage visited the merchant and offered him a single gold coin." The merchant scoffed. The disciples exchanged glances, sensing the unfolding lesson hidden within the simplicity of the tale. The sage said, "This coin is no different from your others, yet you are blind to its futility." Buddha turned toward Sudama, his gaze piercing yet gentle. The merchant realized his treasures were mere objects, incapable of filling his spirit. His heart softened. The disciples nodded, their expressions reflecting the resonance of Buddha's words within their own hearts. "Sudama," Buddha said, "the mind clings to its possessions, even when they are thoughts, beliefs, or fears." He paused, his voice growing softer. "Healing the body requires skill, but freeing the mind demands mindfulness." The disciples inhaled deeply, the river's rhythm harmonizing with their breaths. Sudama bowed his head slightly, his voice quiet yet firm. Master, how can mindfulness aid a healer when faced with a patient's turmoil? His question hung in the air, a silent plea for guidance. Buddha's expression remained serene, his wisdom radiating through his silence. Imagine, Buddha said, a still pond reflecting the sky. When stirred, it distorts. When calm, it mirrors perfectly. The disciples nodded, their understanding forming like ripples across a tranquil surface. A healer's mind must be as the still pond, undisturbed and clear. Buddha closed his eyes briefly, his presence filling the space between spoken words. To practice mindfulness, he continued, begin with the breath, observe it as it is. Without force or judgment, the disciples followed suit, their chests rising and falling in unison, their minds attuned to Buddha's guidance. Sudama's face softened, his burdens momentarily lifted by the simplicity of the act. Master, he asked, how can this practice reach the suffering of another? Buddha opened his eyes, their depths reflecting endless compassion, and began anew. A woman once sought me, he said, tormented by guilt for a quarrel with her dying mother. The disciples listened, their hearts tightening at the pain of the woman's plight. I told her to sit by her mother's side and breathe, each breath a thread of reconciliation. Buddha's voice carried the weight of the countless lives he had touched. As her mother passed, the woman wept, not from guilt but from gratitude for their shared peace. The disciples' faces reflected their inner transformations, their understanding blooming like flowers in sunlight. Sudama's hands stilled, their previous trembling replaced by a steady calm. Master, he said, his voice resolute, I will teach my patients to breathe as I heal their wounds. Buddha's smile was barely perceptible but filled with a profound warmth that embraced the moment. The morning sun climbed higher, illuminating the faces of the disciples as they absorbed Buddha's teachings. The medicine of mindfulness, Buddha said, is accessible to all, regardless of skill or wealth. His words flowed like the river beside them, unyielding yet adaptable to its course. The sick may resist, Buddha continued, his tone steady, but like the merchant, they will see when their hearts are ready. The disciples murmured their agreement, their understanding deepened by the metaphor. Sudama's doubts seemed to evaporate, his shoulders no longer burdened. Buddha rose gracefully, his every movement imbued with the stillness he preached. He stepped into the river, the water parting gently around his feet as though it too were listening. Turning to his disciples, he extended a hand, his invitation clear. Come, he said, let us walk in silence. Each step a mindful embrace of the earth. The disciples followed, their movements synchronized, their breaths steady. The river's rhythm became their own, each ripple a reminder of their interconnectedness. As they walked, Buddha's presence anchored them, his silence as profound as his spoken words. The journey became a meditation, their steps creating patterns in the sand that the water lovingly erased. Time seemed to dissolve, leaving only the sacred act of walking. By the day's end, the disciples returned to the monastery, their spirits renewed by the simplicity of the practice. Sudama approached Buddha, his voice steady yet reverent. Master, he said, mindfulness has lifted my doubts and shown me the path to true healing. Buddha placed a hand on Sudama's shoulder, his touch light yet grounding. Sudama, he said, remember that mindfulness is not a destination but a journey. Walk it with humility. The disciples bowed deeply, their hearts alight with Buddha's teachings, their resolve unshakable. As the sun set, casting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the monastery grew quiet. Buddha sat alone by the riverbank, the water reflecting the boundlessness of his wisdom. The stillness of the evening mirrored the clarity he had bestowed, a gift that would ripple through generations. Another day, the monastery was bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, its tranquility unbroken by the world's chaos. Buddha sat beneath the banyan tree, his eyes closed in meditation, his presence grounding the restless hearts around him. His disciples gathered, their faces weary yet determined, yearning for solace and wisdom. Among them was Arjun, a caregiver who had tended to the ill and dying for years with steadfast dedication. His shoulders slumped under the weight of unspoken exhaustion, his hands trembling as they rested on his lap. Buddha opened his eyes, his gaze meeting Arjun's, filled with an unspoken invitation to share his burden. Arjun spoke hesitantly, his voice strained with the weariness of countless nights spent in service. "Master," he began, "I have devoted myself to aiding others. Yet my heart feels hollow and my spirit wanes." His confession hung in the air, raw and vulnerable, drawing the silent attention of all present. Buddha listened, his expression unwavering, his silence imbued with understanding. "Arjun," he said gently, "service born of compassion nourishes the soul, yet service born of obligation depletes it." He paused, allowing his words to settle like dew on leaves. Refreshing and profound, Buddha continued, "Let me tell you a story of a monk named Sangha, who tirelessly cared for his ailing brethren." The disciples leaned forward, their breaths steady, their anticipation a tangible presence beneath the vast canopy of stars. Sangha tended to their wounds, offered them water, and stayed by their sides through countless nights. Arjun's eyes glistened, his own experiences reflected in the story of the devoted monk. Yet, Buddha said, Sangha began to falter, his strength waning as his heart grew heavy with despair. The disciples exchanged glances, their expressions a tapestry of empathy and introspection. One day, Buddha continued, Sangha approached me and said, "Master, my body is weary, and my spirit feels like an empty vessel." His words resonated deeply, echoing Arjun's unspoken struggle and the silent understanding of the gathered disciples. Buddha's gaze swept across the group, resting momentarily on each face. "I told Sangha," he said, "compassion is not a river that runs dry but a wellspring replenished through balance and mindfulness." The disciples nodded, their understanding deepened by the simplicity and depth of the metaphor. Arjun's voice, tentative yet steady, broke the silence. "Master," he asked, "how does one find balance when the needs of others seem endless and their suffering so immense?" His question lingered, a poignant reflection of his inner turmoil and the collective struggle of all present. Buddha's voice grew softer, resonating with an almost melodic cadence. "The heart must be like the moon," he said, illuminating the night yet waxing and waning in its own rhythm. His words painted a vivid image, their poetic beauty anchoring the abstract concept in tangible reality. "To serve others," Buddha continued, "you must first serve yourself, tending to your own needs with the same compassion." The disciples inhaled deeply, the truth of Buddha's words resonating within their minds and hearts like the ripples of a quiet stream. Arjun's shoulders relaxed slightly, his spirit buoyed by the wisdom he had sought. "Master," he asked, "how can I replenish my spirit without turning away from those who depend on me?" The disciples held their breaths, their own unspoken questions entwined with Arjun's. Buddha smiled faintly, his gaze filled with the light of infinite compassion. "Imagine," he said, "a tree that bears fruit for all yet grows stronger through the nourishment of the earth." His analogy drew murmurs of agreement, its simplicity a mirror to the profound interconnectedness of life. "The tree," Buddha explained, "does not cease to bear fruit, but its roots must be nurtured, its soil replenished." His words inspired a renewed sense of purpose, their clarity dissolving the fog of doubt clouding the disciples' hearts. Arjun's lips quivered, a faint smile breaking through the veil of exhaustion. Buddha rose slowly, his movements deliberate, each step imbued with the stillness he embodied. He approached Arjun, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder. "Arjun," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Allow yourself to rest, for in rest lies the seed of resilience. The disciples watched in reverent silence as Buddha continued, his voice carrying the weight of infinite wisdom. Let us meditate now, he said, on the infinite wellspring of compassion within ourselves and the balance needed to sustain it. They closed their eyes, their breaths synchronized with the rhythm of the earth and the pulse of the universe. The hours passed like moments, the stillness of the meditation wrapping around the disciples like a protective cocoon. Arjun's face softened, the lines of weariness etched upon it fading like shadows chased away by dawn's light. Buddha's presence anchored them, a beacon of unwavering calm in a sea of tumult. As the night deepened, Buddha spoke once more, his voice resonating like a sacred chant. Compassion in action, he said, is not a burden but a gift, both to the giver and the receiver. His words carried the weight of an eternal truth, their simplicity transcending the barriers of thought and language. The disciples emerged from their meditation, their spirits renewed, their resolve unshakable. Arjun approached Buddha, bowing deeply, his voice steady yet imbued with reverence. Master, he said, your words have lifted my burden and shown me a path to compassion sustained by balance and mindfulness. Buddha placed his hands together in a gesture of blessing, his gaze filled with a quiet pride. Arjun, he said, your journey has just begun. Walk it with humility, patience, and an open heart, for the path is infinite. The disciples dispersed, their hearts illuminated by Buddha's teachings, their lives forever transformed. As the moon reached its zenith, casting a silver glow over the monastery, Buddha remained seated beneath the banyan tree. His eyes reflected the stillness of eternity, his presence a silent testament to the boundless compassion that binds all beings. The teachings of that night etched themselves into the hearts of the disciples, their ripples radiating outward to touch lives yet unknown. Sharing, even through a kind word, lightens both the giver and receiver. His wisdom illuminated a path forward, teaching me that even in struggle, connection offers solace and mutual strength. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.